you've seen babies die, you've had ladies hold your ankle, you've had to cut people's chest open, you've seen dogs and donkeys eating and urinating on kids, you've seen all of this. What kind of PTSD or what kind of internal thoughts do you have that you've not spoken about?
That woman that held my ankle, it still gets to me every day, you know, when I think about that, because I still blame myself every day for letting her down. And you're checking for a pulse and you're seeing this lifeless child and it's dead. Pick up that child off the bed. We put them on the floor because they're dead. They don't need the bed. There's not even dignity in death in Gaza. I don't want to start crying, but...
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Mohammed.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
You said you had a lot of work overnight.
Yeah.
Was that to do with the hospital or just other stuff you were doing?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's relentless. Like when you're working between different countries and different time zones, you know, while it's nighttime here, it's daytime over there. So, you know, in order to try and catch different ministers and different organizations, I just have to kind of always be ready by my phone, which means that, like, I don't get to sleep very often and I sleep for a very little amount of time. So, but alhamdulillah, you know, it's all for a good cause.
One question that I have in my mind is because you've seen babies die, you've had ladies hold your ankle, you've had to cut people's chest open, you've seen dogs and donkeys eating and urinating on kids, you've seen all of this. And we were talking about it beforehand that this is like a horror movie, it's worse than a horror movie. But what kind of PTSD or what kind of internal thoughts do you have that you've not spoken about? Because you speak about everything that you've seen. You've not seen you've not spoken about how that's affected you.
Yeah, you know, that woman that held my ankle, it's still, you know, I don't want to start crying, but it still gets to me every day, you know, when I think about that, because I still blame myself every day for letting her down. And you know, when you're in a mass casualty event and the screams of women and children as they're being brought in and they're putting children down on the bed and you're checking for a pulse and you're seeing this lifeless child and it's dead and there's not even a moment to just, you know, have a moment of silence for this child. There's not a moment to take in what's happened, to respect the death of this child, because as soon as that's there, what we literally do is we pick up that child off the bed and we put them on the floor because they're dead. They don't need the bed. This other child coming in, we pick them off the floor and we put them on the bed. And, you know, for me, maybe for other doctors it doesn't affect them as much the way that it affected me, but for me, like, it's my people. It's where I'm from. And to take a child off a bed and put them on the floor and just to leave them in a corner, maybe even people step on them, you know, it affects you. It affects you because there's not even dignity in death in Gaza. And I think that's what a lot of people just don't even consider, is just like the lack of dignity. You know, that child on the floor that's dead, they could be there for like 2 hours, 3 hours while we're dealing with all the mass casualty events. Do you know? They could be put and moved in another corner just to make way for other people. There's no respect for the body because we've got that many people coming in. And that happens so often in Gaza. And I think it's, you know, it's things like that I think about that just get to me. And it's not that it just gets to me. It's like sometimes there are stories and things that happened that I haven't even spoken about yet, you know. And it's one of those things where I'm like, if I open up this story, this can of worms, like, that's going to start affecting me, you know, as well. So I try and hold back a little bit. But, you know, when you work in an emergency department, I'm seeing 100, 200 patients a day. You know, I was there 5 weeks last time, dealing in mass casualty events. Like, there's a lot of interactions. And then I'm working, you know, 18-hour days sometimes. I'm going to the wards. I'm going out in the marketplace in Gaza. Like, I got to see a lot of Gaza and I got to do a lot of things. And, you know, obviously having family in Gaza, it brings a different element to it. You know, when you have a family in Gaza and you go and you visit your uncle at his house, and your auntie and your cousins, and you hear their stories and what they tell you and things that have happened to them, you know, it brings just a whole different perspective on Gaza, because you're there with the family. You know, you're there living it. I remember one night I stayed over at my uncle's house. You know, you're not allowed to. You should stay at the safe house at the hospital, but obviously it's my family. So I remember we stayed over, and there was an Apache helicopter in the neighborhood just shooting at all the houses. And I remember just being in the house with them. We were all in a room together, me and my cousins, and we were like, is this going to be the end? Just getting pepper sprayed everywhere. You know, and I remember thinking to myself, like, you know, because we didn't sleep at all that night, because it was just the drones were over the neighborhood, the Apache helicopters were shooting everywhere. And I remember thinking to myself, imagine living like this for 2 years. You know, and
Yeah, you go crazy.
You'd go crazy, and you know, I'm not a hero. I'm not like a Superman or anything. Like I was scared. I was scared so many times in Gaza, but you can't let fear control you when you're there. You've got a job to do, you know. And I held it like an amana. This is an amana. I've been entrusted here to be in Gaza. There's not many doctors that get to go, and the ones that do get to go, every minute is precious. And that's the way I just viewed it. Like every minute I have to be doing something. You know, I remember times my uncle would beg me to stay and take a day off, you know, just to spend time with the family. And I'd say, I can't. My time off would be if I finished my shift in the evening, I'd come and I'd sleep in the next morning. And I'd come literally to my uncle's house just so I can get my washing done. I can sleep in a bed and then I can go back to work. Because, you know, I didn't even have time to do my washing and laundry and stuff like that. So my cousins would look after me from that point of view. They'd made sure that everything was ready and okay for me to go to work the next day. And yeah, you know, it's a difficult environment, Gaza.
When you were away from the hospital and you were in your room and you knew that any time, even though your shift's over, any time you could probably go straight back out, straight to the hospital. Yeah. What were the kind of thoughts that were going through your mind?
You know, it's look, I remember there was one incident where, you know, we had a child that had come in. Well, it was a whole family that had come in, but the child was a 3-year-old and his head was missing, the entire head. I posted on this on my social media. His entire head was missing. And I remember the paramedic, or the nurse, sorry, from the ER, went into the back of the ambulance to have a look and, you know, see which bodies need to go where. And he just picked up this child, headless child, and he walked with him. I think this video went viral of him just walking through the entranceway of the hospital with this headless child. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is our second mass casualty event already. And the level of violence, like a headless child, and then the family coming in and the father holding this headless child. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, you know, how do you prepare mentally for that image, to see that image of a 3-year-old with his head missing, his mother obliterated, not even recognizable, just a bag of organs. And then the father, he has to deal with that. And the extended family and whoever else is dead. And, you know, we went to the morgue and, you know, they were opening up the body bags. Family members were coming in, crying, picking up this headless child, hugging this headless child, putting it down. And I remember just, you know, because it's blood everywhere in these bags. And, you know, there's barely any electricity. So this morgue isn't very cold. And I remember just thinking to myself, Yani, this is like a horror film. But like, I've seen this over and over again since I've been here. It's almost daily we're in this morgue, putting people in body bags in every single day. And then what gives me more perspective is the fact that I was there last year and the same things were going on last year. So I'm looking at it, I'm going like, the 9 months of every day like this since the time since I was there first time and then when I went back. Every day these horrific scenes. And I always think about the family members that get affected by this. I always think about the survivors. You know, the ones that died, alhamdulillah, like they're shuhada, they're martyrs. Yeah, they're with Allah. But the ones that survive, like, how do you carry that? How does that man go on when his wife is a bag of organs and burnt flesh and his kid's got a head missing? How does he go on? And those are the things that I think about, you know, and you know, I just think about things in a much deeper level, I think, than some other doctors, and I really ruminate over these people, and I feel deeply connected to them because I'm there when those moments happen, when they come in. I'm there when they break down, when they have to open the body bags and they see their child for the first time, when they see their wife for the first time, when a child opens up a body bag and sees their dead father, and you can see the pain in the child's eye, because that child now knows they're on their own. And there's like 40,000 orphans in Gaza, probably more, that have not been documented. How many of those children had to open up body bags and see their parents dead? How many of those children witnessed their families dying in front of them? You know, there was this one girl, she's called Janine. 28 members of her family were killed in an airstrike in their home, and her sister was in a bed right next to her. When they dug up to try and recover, you know, these people, they found her sister in the bed next to her cut in half. And her father was dead. But the reason why she survived was because she slept in her father's arms that night. So he took the whole hit. His body was completely disintegrated. Her sister was cut in half. And she had multiple skull fractures as well, and she had a broken leg. And she came into the hospital, slipping in and out of consciousness. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this girl probably turned and looked and saw her sister cut in half, and her dad, the only thing holding her was his arms and this disintegrated body. You know, I'm still in touch with Janine. I'm still in touch with, you know, her uncle who's alive, who looks after her, and her auntie. And to this day, she's so traumatized, she only says about 3 or 4 words.
Wow.
It's been 2.5 months. But that's how traumatized this kid is. And I think what happens is a lot of people come out of Gaza, a lot of the doctors, when they come out of Gaza, and they talk about the statistics and how many died and, you know, maybe some war crimes that they saw. But for me, like, it's family for me. It's family. These people are related to me. These people are connected to me. These people are from, you know, these people are my people. And, you know, Gaza is a bit unique because Gaza, yeah, it's part of Palestine, but it's been isolated for 20 years. You know, it's been under this siege for 20 years. So the people from Gaza, they're distinct from, you know, the people in the West Bank in the sense of, like, you know, they don't get to travel outside of Gaza. Many of the people in Gaza have never left Gaza. Many of the people of Gaza have never had, you know, a pad Thai, never tried Thai food or anything like that, you know.
And that was also your first time into Gaza as well?
Yeah, well, my first time, yeah, was last year. But, you know, obviously, like, we've had family there. My dad was born there. So I've always been connected to Gaza. I've always had family that we talk to. I've had my granddad was there. He died there and we buried him there. My extended family is there as well. My mum's side of the family is there as well. So, like, I have a large family in Gaza. And obviously going there and experiencing all of that, it's very different to the family that we say we have in the West Bank. It's a different life that they live in Gaza. And that's why for me, like, it affected me so much because I would think about these people so much, and I would ruminate over their stories. I would ruminate over the horrors that they've been inflicted. And I stay in touch with so many of these patients that I treated.
What's the difference in life between the people in Gaza and the people in West Bank or the people in Al-Quds? Because when I went there, West Bank was like a ghost town.
Yeah.
And obviously we didn't go into Gaza.
Yeah.
The old city, it became like a ghost town, but it wasn't as busy as it has been before.
Yeah.
And there's checkpoints everywhere. And like we know, there's IDF walking in the West Bank, in the old city. What's different from the people in Gaza? If you compare how they live?
So, you know, when people say it's not an apartheid state, you know, they have the same mechanisms that apartheid South Africa has, which is where you have a card. In order for you to travel between different townships and different cities in apartheid South Africa, you got given a card, like an ID card that was allowed you to free access movement. It's the same in Palestine. You know, the people in Jerusalem have like a green card.
Is it like an Israeli ID and a Jordanian passport?
No. There's no Jordanian passport. So it's Palestinian passport, but what they have is they have like the people in it's split up into like A, B, C sections. The people in Jerusalem have more access to freedom and movement than say the people in the West Bank as a whole. And then you have after the people in the West Bank, the ones at the lowest of the chain are the people in Gaza. They don't have the same access of movement or anything like that. If you're, got one of these yellow cards in the West Bank, you're probably not allowed to go to Jerusalem.
Okay.
Right? You're only allowed to go to Jerusalem if you're over the age of like 55 as a man, if you've been given special permission. And if you have, they might only allow you a day to go over there and come back before the evening. But the problem is there's no guarantee with the checkpoints that you'll be able to get to Al-Aqsa, pray, and go back home in time. And if you break the curfew, if you don't get back in time, then they could arrest you, they could ban you for life. So most of the time, even the people that can go to Al-Aqsa don't go to Al-Aqsa because logistically it's almost impossible with all the checkpoints. So they live under, checkpoints and military siege in the West Bank, but there's a bit more access of freedom of movement. They can leave and go to Jordan and fly out and, go on holiday or go visit relatives abroad or whatever. But in Gaza, you are locked in an open-air prison. That's what David Cameron described it as in 2012. And it's only got worse since then.
So they can't leave Gaza at all?
Yeah, no, they can't. They have to apply if they want to leave to Gaza. Then there has to be approvals from multiple different authorities for them to leave. So there's that. There's obviously the blockade. And there's obviously the mowing the lawn every 2-3 years, where they get bombed every 2-3 years. So Gaza is a very different place to anywhere else in the world. I mean, we're talking about a 2 million population locked by land, sea, and air in essentially an open air prison.
Now you have the US and Israel governments. They want to push the people of Gaza out of Gaza now, and they're making plans of this waterfront and everything.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something that we can do to stop that?
Well, look, Palestine is not for Palestinians. Palestine is for the Ummah. This is a collective responsibility, because once they finish with Gaza, their eyes will turn to the West Bank and Jerusalem and Al-Quds. I mean, they've made that very, very clear. This burden has been bestowed upon the Palestinian people to hold and defend. And, the people in Gaza, I've never seen people so brave in my life. I've never seen resilience like the people in Gaza. Now, people might say I'm biased because I'm from Gaza, but just the people there in Gaza, I've never seen people killed en masse and people fall in love with them for how gracefully they suffered. How gracefully the people of Gaza have suffered has opened the hearts of people that used to hate Islam. Muslims that weren't practicing Islam came back to Islam because of the people in Gaza, because of their Islam and what they showed. We've never seen this before. I've never seen a coordinated media campaign to get consent for this genocide. And the only thing that those people in Gaza who have been starved of food, water, medicine, all they have is their phones and their stories. And just by recording themselves and the world watching how gracefully they react to death, how resilient they are, how unbreakable their spirit is, it's reignited the Muslim Ummah. The Muslim world has become closer over this. The rates of people reverting to Islam in the West has gone up by like 300%, 400%, 600% in some countries, all because of Gaza. And to me, what that shows is it shows that Gaza has fought the spiritual front, has fought the da'wah front. That's what Gaza has done. But if they've done that and they've raised the profile of Islam, they've lifted the Muslim Ummah and they've given back to so many people, they've brought Islam back to so many hearts right here, then it's incumbent on us to do everything that we can to save them, to protect them. They've done their bit. And in our religion, in Islam and Allah, the way that things work is not always the way that we expect, right? No matter how many battles Israel wins on the on the battlefield. They've lost the war. The people of Gaza have won the war. But what we need to do as a collective Muslim ummah is we need to help them. They've done the heavy lifting. They've turned the hearts of the world by themselves.
How do we help them? Because right now people are doing boycotting, which you got stick for because you're having Snickers while you're in Gaza, if you remember. But that's the only food there. Even when I was in Jerusalem, they had Coke cans, but that's what they're given to sell. They don't have anything else. But there's a boycott movement. You've got the Freedom Flotilla, which we can speak about a bit later on. What other ways can we help the people of Gaza and the people of Palestine?
Yeah. I mean, look, everyone has a lane. And I'm always a big believer of this, right? Yeah, look, the West, in order for the West to give Muslims, you know, any kind of sympathy, you have to be the perfect victim, which means a child. And even if you're a child like Hind Rajab, you're still questionable, right? And we need to, as Muslims, also not fall into this trap by being the perfect activist, by being the perfect Muslim. We can't have people who have just come into the movement, right, who have never heard of Palestine before, who've now seen what's happened. They might not have the same ideas of what a free Palestine looks like that you do or I do, that have been involved in this since we were born. But we have to be able to welcome them with open arms, despite whatever flawed logic that they have for certain other areas. You know, if I'm a 10 out of 10 for pro-Palestine and they're a 5 out of 10, why are we wasting time arguing about that 5 of 10 in between? Let's use that 5 out of 10 and my 10 out of 10 and let's make it a 15 out of 10 rather than fighting with them over the 5 out of 10. And I honestly think that's probably going to be one of the biggest things that we need to do as a movement and as a ummah, is to unite, is to be united on this, is to unite with everyone, is to talk to everyone, not to be afraid to talk and cross the bench to the other side, be open. We're witnessing a movement, a different movement. Obviously, you know, look, there's the boycotts, there's the going to court and, you know, taking governments to court over their roles in this genocide. There's the ICJ, the ICC. All of these are great things, but there's pressure points, you see. These are all pressure points. But what needs to happen is everyone needs to be united. And sometimes in the pro-Palestine movement, we don't see that. We don't see the unity.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, you know, there's so much like controversy with different NGOs, what their messaging is. You know, like I say, I was in Gaza. I was literally in Gaza as the hospital was being bombed, right? And I had a Snickers, and I remember taking a picture of the Snickers, right? And I said, you're not you when you're hungry. And it was obviously a reference to the fact that, like, we weren't eating regular meals when we were in Gaza. And I remember getting a flood of messages of people going, you know, that's on the boycott list. And I'm going, like, I'm in Gaza. Like, there's no food here, and you're telling me to boycott food when food isn't allowed in Gaza. Food hasn't been allowed in Gaza for weeks, and you're telling me to boycott this Snickers, the only source of food that I've had for the day. That's what I mean about, like, the movement just being so fragmented. You know, put aside that the fact that I'm actually there in Gaza, working, helping people there in Gaza. If I'm going to have a Snickers, like, I'll have a Snickers. Do you know what I mean? But it's just the fact that, like, people are so obsessed that you have to be the perfect activist. So I have to be in the hospital as it's being bombed. I have to be there helping the people of Gaza. And also at the same time, I have to make sure that I'm boycotting everything and, you know, eating only the certain foods that we're allowed to eat. And what do you want from me? I literally am in the hospital as it's being bombed. Like, I could die. And your concern is that I'm eating a Snickers in a place where there's no food.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. There's a lot of problems like this. There's a lot of people where they go, why is, you know, like Bassem Youssef gets criticized, you know, different Muslim, you know, activists get, you know, Muhammad Hijab, Ali Dawa, these guys get criticized a lot. And look, you might not have to agree with everything that people do, but when we're so focused on infighting, guys, I'm just there. I'm like, guys, there's children dying over here.
That's more important.
That's more important than he's not reaching the same level that I am, or I don't agree with all of his ideas. Even with what I'm trying to do by bringing in a kids hospital into Gaza, there are people that oppose me for doing that. There are people going, you need to focus all your efforts on getting food into Gaza. And I'm just sat there and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, okay, I need to get food into Gaza. I understand that, but like, why do I have to be? I'm a doctor.
Yeah, that's
my lane. My lane is the hospital.
Yeah,
I'm a much bigger advocate for the hospital because of me working in hospitals in Gaza, me being a doctor. That's more effective. I'm more efficient trying to break the medical siege on Gaza, trying to bring in doctors into Gaza, trying to bring in hospitals into Gaza. That's where I would excel most at. That's where I'd be most effective at, not at bringing more food into Gaza. We've got everybody trying to bring food into Gaza. So, and these things all go hand in hand. Like, they don't see the bigger picture. If I get the hospital into Gaza, that's a route in now to Gaza that we've got. Now we've established a route into Gaza, whether it's governments coming together to bring this hospital in, which we're trying to do. Once we get that route into Gaza, that then opens up the floodgates for everything else. But again, this is what I mean about, like, just because you don't share the same vision that I do doesn't mean I'm wrong. And it doesn't mean that you're wrong if you don't share the same vision as me.
There's probably about 100 different ways that everyone can help. And it is, like you said, staying in your lane. You're a doctor, you focus on medical. It doesn't make sense for you to start focusing on logistics and bringing in food.
Yeah.
Do you ever... You're quite outspoken in terms of what's happening. You're outspoken about, I'm going to build this hospital.
Yeah.
You're outspoken about the stories you've seen. You're humanizing the Palestinians, which is complete opposite to what the Israelis are doing. Do you ever fear for your life that they are going to come after you?
I'm a human being. I have a family. Of course I'm scared. But I've had a lot go on in the background. I've had a lot of personal attacks and things like that. But at the end of the day, I'm with Allah. I'm walking with Allah. And, I'm not doing this for fame or glory. I'm doing this for our Ummah. I'm doing this for those people in Gaza. I'm doing it for the children in Gaza. And I understand that if you're trying to do something, if you're trying to fight back against a genocide, there will be people that will oppose you. And some of those people are on our side as well. But, for me, it doesn't matter. Whatever happens, happens. It's in the hands of Allah. The only thing that I ever worry about, right, is my intention and my niyyah. I just want to make sure that whatever happens to me, that my intention stays pure, that I'm only doing this for the sake of Allah and nothing else. So that's the only thing that really scares me and worries me. The more times you're on TV and people, they come and they hug you on the streets and thank you so much for what you're doing. I worry about all of that because I don't want all of that. I want it to remain focused on the mission and not on me. I don't want to be a hero. I don't want to be a celebrity. I don't want to be any of those things. But subhanAllah, like, I've been put into this now because, like you say, I'm outspoken. I speak in a nice way. I can rationalize my thoughts. And I'm not scared to talk and tell the truth of what's happening. And I think my whole life, Allah has geared me for something like this. I used to be bullied when I was at school. I was very outspoken then. I always stood up for justice, no matter what it was, even when I was a kid. I used to walk home the Asian kids from school, the Pakistani boys. They were a lot smaller, and they used to get bullied. And sometimes people would pick fights with them when they would walk home. I would walk them home every day, because I was a much bigger guy. So I would walk them home every single day. And that was me since I was a kid. Like, I've always, it's just the way that I'm ingrained. I've always wanted to stand up for the little guy. So there's always consequences for your actions, But like I say, my biggest fear isn't the worry about, the threats to my life or the threats to my character or anything like that. My biggest worry is that Allah just accepts what I'm doing.
I mean, you're talking about when you were younger, your father has played a massive part in your life as well. What has he ingrained in you? Because you weren't born in Gaza, you weren't born in Palestine, you were born in Mecca. What has it ingrained in you to be a Palestinian, to help? Because, for example, I was born here, my father was born in India, but I don't have that passion for India that you have for Palestine. What did he ingrain in you?
I mean, watching my dad, how generous he is, how much he helps people, the love that he has for his home, and watching Palestinians and seeing what they're like and seeing how, these people have lost everything and how generous they still are. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, I want to be part of that. I know that I'm in the diaspora of Palestinians outside, but the love that my dad has for his home and the longing that he has to go home one day, to return back to his home. And you could see that every day in him. You know, he would work extra hours at work. He would, you know, when we would have holidays, he would take his holiday to do extra work, you know, to pay for us, to support family back in Gaza. And I was like, why is he, you know, why is this so important for him? And, you know, as you grow up and you learn more about Palestine and what it meant to the Ummah, you know, that was the first Qibla. We used to pray facing towards Al-Aqsa first, before Mecca. When the Prophet ﷺ did his night journey there, when he led all the prophets in prayer there, when it says in the hadith that the wings of angels rest in Ash-Sham, that no matter which part of history comes, there will always be people on the right path in Ash-Sham. That's where I'm from. It's my home. And it's a burden. It's a burden that you feel as a Palestinian, because it's isolating and you're so alone in this world. You're fighting against this occupation. The media are against you. The other Arab surrounding countries are against you as Palestinians. And you have to hold up this entire weight of the Ummah on your shoulders. That's what it feels like. And I just knew that it was important for me to fight for this cause.
When the attacks in Gaza first started, did you feel like the Arab countries may help at that point?
Well, you know, I always thought, like, when you've got a country chanting death to Arabs, death to the Arabs, and saying that they're going to enslave the Arab race and all that kind of stuff, I would have thought that people would have had a bit more pride. Even if you don't care about Palestine, surely you care about the fact that you're an Arab. Where's the nationalism?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, forget Islam. What about your nationalism? That's what you all are now here. Everyone's carrying and waving their flag. Where's the nationalism? So I thought that there would have been somebody would have said something by now, would have done something. An Arab nation would have stood up. But obviously that just didn't happen.
I want to move on to some of the other doctors that you had. So you went with an Australian New Zealand group.
Yeah.
Was that the second time or first time you went?
That was the second time that I went.
So what was the makeup of the doctors? Were there like a few Muslim ones, a few non-Muslim? What was it like? And what was your relationship like with them as well? So
the first time that I went, you know, it was mainly Arab doctors, and then there was a couple of American doctors, one of them non-Muslim. The second time was a couple of Muslim doctors that went in. Look, the first time I went in, I mean, it was an amazing group of people. You know, the Jordanian doctors, they're something else, because, you know, they're Jordanian, but like they're also, you know, Palestinian heritage, right? And I remember when we would go in, you know, I remember this time round, the guys would leave the hospital at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night to go to the north of Gaza, because there's an operation that needs to be done. So the anaesthetist and the surgeon, the two Jordanian guys, would leave drones overhead, bombs going off everywhere. And these guys would walk, and on the back of donkey carts would go to the north to go and do operations on people that needed operating on. I mean, the level of courage, you know what I mean? So, you know, when you're in a team where everyone is willing to sacrifice everything just to save one life, subhanallah, man, it's just like you feel it, you know what I mean? You feel proud to be a Muslim. Like, where are these heroes anywhere else in the world? You know, and then you see the paramedics, the Gaza paramedics, and what they're like, you know, when they're just going in to the back of ambulances and driving into red zones and bringing people out from under the rubble. And, you know, like it motivates you. It makes you feel like, I'm going to say, I need to step up my game here. You know, these people are literally risking their lives just to go and save lives. It might not even save those lives, but they're risking their lives just for the chance of saving a life. What's
the general feeling of the paramedics and the group of doctors you go? Because paramedics are bringing in, they're collecting the bodies, dead or alive.
Yeah.
The doctors are doing whatever they can. Surgeons weren't allowed in as well, I believe.
Yeah.
What's the general feeling among each other?
One of the things is compassion fatigue, right? You know, these people have seen children die every single day for almost 2 years, and not just children die, they're seeing them in the dozens every day being killed. Eventually, after a few months, it's not going to have the same effect on you. You know, it's even hormonal as well, like the adrenaline rush goes away. You know, how many mass casualty events do you have to see before you just get, you know, tired of seeing the same thing, and the urgency goes away? Oh yeah, another mass casualty event. This is been like this for 6 months, every day, multiple mass casualty events. So a lot of the doctors have compassion fatigue in Gaza. But even though they have compassion fatigue, they still raise their game up when they need to. And I remember when we were there the night the ceasefire broke, and, you know, we didn't have many staff on that night. We only had 3 doctors in the ER. And then hundreds of people began to arrive, you know, with all the bombs going off. And we came down, the international doctors. But, you know, the international doctors there, I'm an ER doctor, so I was fine. There was another ER doctor, but then, you know, and there was an ER nurse. But everyone else was like a gynae doctor, ENT, you know, gen surge. Like, they weren't ED guys. But everyone like grouped together to try and get this done. And I remember we were outside on the street leading into the hospital. Like, it was in the hospital grounds, but it was the street leading in. There was bodies everywhere, and we were just trying to do fast scans. And I remember when all that was going on, I remember looking up and it was a doctor, and he was essentially in his pajamas. And he said to me, "Irtahi, doctor, احنا هون." Like, relax, doctor, we're here. And these guys, these doctors, these Palestinian doctors, had came in the middle of the night from their homes in their pajamas to come to the hospital to help because they knew we'd be overwhelmed. Now, the reason why I tell you about the compassion fatigue is because I want you to bear that in mind, that they've got compassion fatigue, that they are tired of seeing these mass casualty events. They can't exert the same emotion. You know, you can't. It's a self-defense mechanism. You can't break down and cry every time. I can. I was there for a few weeks, but these guys are living in it every single day, and they're watching their families be obliterated every single day. So it's a coping mechanism, but despite that coping mechanism, they're coming in the middle of the night, drones overhead, shooting people in the streets. They're leaving their families at home, not knowing if they're going to be bombed. And they're coming to the hospital to help us. That's despite having compassion fatigue. That just shows you their commitment. And that for me was like one of the most, you know, was a really profound moment.
Is there a typical day for a doctor there, or is it right now? It's just whenever something happens, just be ready.
There is no typical. I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen. Every day is a crazy day in Gaza. You know, when we were there, they bombed the Turkish hospital and they blew up the only cancer hospital left in Gaza. Then they bombed the UN safe house. Then they bombed Nasser hospital. You saw the images of the missile just flying in and bombing the Nasser hospital. Then they burnt the journalists alive in the tents. Then they executed the paramedics. I mean, all of this was while I was in Gaza. I mean, it was just chaos, nuts. Bombed the hospital while we were in the hospital. So there's never 2 days that are the same in Gaza, and it's obviously not the same because like it's the people that are affected, you know, the families that you meet in this mass casualty event and the families that you meet in that mass casualty event and their stories. And you know, I'd spend a lot of time talking with families and visiting them after I'd seen them in the ER and they'd be admitted on the wards. I would always go back and see the patients and try and reassure the family. Sometimes I'd bring them food and things like that. Like, you know, I used to bring sweets and stuff like that for the kids. So, yeah, like every day is just a different day.
What would make the non-Muslim doctors go back? Because you're Palestinian, you see, you have family there, you see it as your responsibility.
Yeah.
I can understand a Muslim doctor because Palestine, like you said, is our land.
Yeah.
It's part of Asham. What makes the non-Muslim doctors go back?
Well, it's the Palestinians themselves. They fall in love with the people. And also as well, they see a difference that they're making. But it's the fact that they fall in love with the people of Gaza. That's what makes them go back. You know, the friendships that they form. I mean, you see it all the time, you know, people talking about our colleagues, you know, the doctors when they go, our colleagues, because it's their generosity, it's their care. That's what makes people go back, is literally just being around these people. Because these are blessed people, man. The people in Gaza are blessed people. Like, you are lucky if you get to spend time with them. And I think a lot of non-Muslims even feel the same way. And that's why they want to keep going back to Gaza.
You mentioned the Turkish hospital that got bombed. Was that the hospital that the Israelis said there's Hamas underneath?
No, that was Al-Shifa Hospital. The Turkish hospital, they actually used that as a military base for a whole year. And then after they finished using it as a military base, then they bombed it. Which goes again, I mean, if you're using it as a military base, a hospital, and this is what I mean about every accusation is a confession. You can't use hospitals as military bases, but yet you used the cancer hospital as a military base for a year. and then you blew it up afterwards, so it couldn't be used.
So did you come across anyone from Hamas in the hospitals or in the bunkers, or is that just a complete lie?
I mean, look, there's nobody in uniform that comes into the hospital with AK-47s or guns or whatever, and you never see people with guns walking into the hospital, right? So it's hard to tell. But there's an open door policy. Like, we go into all the rooms, we can go into any place in the hospital. Nothing is restricted to us as international aid workers. And plus, the hospital is where most international aid organizations have their bases from. So if you're running a military campaign where there's the press media there, there's all the foreign doctors there, it's a pretty silly move, right? But obviously as well, like, you know, there's obviously going to be people that were injured that are going to be in the hospital. But again, you know, most of the patients that we had in the hospital were women and children. And it's not illegal to get medical treatment in a hospital. What is illegal is bombing that hospital. And that's what people focus on, is, you know, the justification of it. Oh, well, you know, there's a Hamas fighter in there, so we can bomb the hospital. You can't do that. And I think that's what we kind of have to just take a step back from sometimes and just go like, look, it's completely off limits. You know, unless there's a nuclear bomb hidden in the hospital, there's no justification. There's no air force. There's no rockets, you know, that aren't homemade rockets that don't do anything, that get shot down, most of them by the Iron Dome. So what justification is there to level an entire hospital?
And they have apparently precision strikes.
And they have precision strikes as well. I mean, when they want to kill somebody, they can kill someone 10,000 miles away with a precision strike. And yet in Gaza, to get one operative, they have to blow up an entire school filled with women and children. And
by killing women and children, you're killing generations. You're not just killing one woman, one children.
Yeah.
You are planning to build a hospital.
Yeah.
You've been quite vocal about it.
Yeah.
You want it to be government-led,
yes,
privately funded.
Yeah.
What kind of backing do you have, and what is it that you need from the public?
So, you know, we've got the Irish government on board. You can always trust the Irish people to do the right thing. I love them for it. And, you know, we have got diplomatic channels with the Australian government, with the British government about this hospital. Look, at the end of the day, the formula of the hospitals in Gaza doesn't work. You know, no matter what happens, no matter how many times you repair. And remember, these hospitals like Al-Shifa, the Indonesia, they've been bombed previously before and they've been repaired before. But then what happens? They get bombed again. They get destroyed again, right? And we end up waiting weeks at the border, months sometimes, to bring in the raw materials to rebuild, say, a ward in Al-Shifa hospital, right? Or for them to let in a few incubators in for children. Then what happens? Then they bomb it a couple of months later anyway. Or they bomb the storage unit at NASA Hospital like they did a few weeks ago of all the perishable medical goods, right? So the formula doesn't work, which is having these hospitals being, you know, in part of the, you know, Palestinian health ministry. What we need is we need it to be a government-led initiative from outside of Palestine. It's not to take away power from the Palestinian people themselves to self-govern. It's a protection mechanism right now. Because right now we're having children dying on the floor. We're having people dying because they can't get dialysis. We're having people dying because they're waiting for surgeries. We have people dying waiting for CT scans. We need a solution to this. And the solution is to bring a hospital in, and bring a hospital in that has got a British, Australian flag on it, an Irish flag on it, anything that will give it protection and will also give it an access line. Because if that's the British hospital or the Australian hospital, the Israelis might want to ban medical supplies going to Palestinian hospitals, but you can't ban it from your own allies' hospital in Gaza. And it's not to say that, you know, it's going to be the government, it's going to be NGO run. You know, it'll be the same NGOs like MSF and all these other NGOs that want to collaborate. They'll run the hospital, but it'll have the oversight of the government, and that's our layer of protection, and that's our way of how we can get things in. That's what I want it to be. And then it's something where in the future, when Gaza gets rebuilt, these countries have more of a responsibility with regards to the healthcare of these children by coordinating and assisting. You know, look, I'm never going to ask money from these Western governments, right? Especially after a lot of these governments have been complicit in what's happened. But all I'm asking for them is just give us access, give us supply and access, And I'm 100% sure there's millions of people around the world that will fund the hospitals and the projects, and these Gulf countries will pay. But what we need is access. And we need the access for British doctors, Australian doctors, New Zealand doctors, Canadian doctors, Irish doctors and nurses to be able to come to Gaza to work at these hospitals to provide a service. That's why we need the governments. We need them there for logistics. I don't want their money. I just need the logistics.
What's the kind of response that you've had from the British government?
Slow. But we're applying, we're trying to get as much pressure as possible. It's slow. But, this task that we're trying to do is not easy.
Yeah.
It's not an easy mission to get an entire hospital into Gaza when you have a genocidal army trying to destroy all the hospitals. And I think that's why people need to just give us a little bit of patience and show us a little bit of grace, because I'm not the United Nations. I'm not a big organization. I'm just a doctor. I'm one doctor, and the person helping me is a nurse. It's a two-man team, believe it or not. Everything that you've seen, the government endorsements that we've had, the logistics that we've already had to build the hospital and get the plan and all, that's just two people doing all of that. But I just felt we needed something different. We needed a new approach. We couldn't rely on NGOs to do this, because what they're doing, their aim is to get something into Gaza. So they'll say, let's just bring a tent into Gaza with a few medical equipment. It's not going to work.
It's a tick box for them.
It's a tick box. Yeah. We need something that's actually sustainable, something that actually has life to it, something that can actually make a tangible difference and an objective difference on the ground. And that is a hospital. We build a hospital outside and we bring it into Gaza. And it brings life back with it, because once you bring a hospital back into Gaza, now these people who have had their homes destroyed and all the rest of it, now they have access to healthcare. Now they have access to world-class healthcare, because it's going to be staffed by all of us doctors. Now we have a hospital with staffed by all these world-class doctors that can also then teach the doctors in Gaza. Because remember, many of the high-level doctors in Gaza have been killed, have been imprisoned or killed systematically. The lecturers at the universities. So that's why this is important, because this is to fight back against the genocide. We need to bring expertise back to Gaza. Their best engineers, their best doctors, their best senior lecturers at universities have all been killed. Because that was the idea of the genocide. It was to make sure that not only was this place unlivable, but even if people decided to live there, who's left to govern, to lead, to teach? And that's why this hospital is so important. And that's why we want it to be a government-led initiative, because we want to bring that expertise that's been lost back into Gaza.
How close are you to having this hospital? You want it to be built in Jordan, correct?
Yeah.
How close
so we have one. We have a neonatal and maternity and neonatal hospital ready to go. It's on the borders in Jordan. It's ready to go in.
What's stopping it going in?
The Israelis. Okay. But I'm confident that we can get that hospital in, because it's ready to go. I'm confident with the amount of governments that we've spoken to that they're aware of this hospital. And as soon as there is a pause, a ceasefire, that we'll be able to get that hospital in. And if there isn't a ceasefire coming soon, I'm sure that we can still apply pressure and try and get that in. The next step is obviously the pediatric hospital, is building a pediatric hospital and getting the pediatric hospital in. The idea about getting this as well is like, eventually these hospitals that we bring into Gaza, we hand it back to the Palestinian people. It's just a temporary thing. Us running it, us teaching in it, that's to help lighten the load off these people. And again, a lot of people don't understand, like, I'm a Gazawi, I'm Palestinian, right? If I'm saying I want to help my people by, bringing in expertise from the outside to help them, to teach them, to train them right here, then you've got other people going, oh, that's a colonized mindset or whatever. Just like, guys, they've killed everyone. Do you know what I mean? It's actually a pragmatic mindset, actually. It's a practical mindset. We need to help these people, and we need to have all of us there. There might even be, we might even have to bring in teachers into Gaza. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To get the society back, because it's being wiped out in front of our eyes. So, the hospital isn't just about healthcare. The hospital is about so much more. It's about rebuilding the future of Gaza. And one of that is healthcare. And this hospital, don't think of it as just this one structure. Think of it as what comes in, because if we get all these countries to align with the hospital, now we have the blueprint. Now we have...
It's a rinse and repeat method.
Now it's a rinse and repeat method. Now when they build the bigger hospital, we already have a coalition of governments working together in a small hospital that we build. And then when they build the bigger hospital, the same coalition comes in and we have the same access with the same doctors and stuff like that, and we rebuild the healthcare system in Gaza. And now we have a coalition of willing Western governments to help.
What's your current barriers with the governments that you want to help with building? Or is it just more a time situation?
I mean, time, the fact that the war is still continuing. But I think the biggest barrier is, people just don't have the courage to get this done. People are scared.
Which people?
Everyone, MPs, governments,
Is it the Israeli lobby they're scared of? Or?
I mean, it might be the Israeli lobby. It might be the fact that, really the people who decide the fate of this are the Israelis and the Americans. And, the US government is not supporting bringing a hospital into Gaza. I mean, they're actively talking about plans of getting the population out.
Yeah.
And I think if you're a prime minister or if you're a president of a country, you saying that you are going to back a hospital and help bring in a hospital, right? Yeah, that goes up against in the face of what's going on. But just because that's their policy doesn't mean that I give up. Doesn't mean that I stop trying. I've got to keep fighting to get this hospital in, because this hospital means so much more than it just being a hospital. Because if we get this hospital in, it means that their plan to kick everybody out, well, it becomes a bit more difficult now that we've got healthcare back into Gaza. Do you know what I mean? And then I need everybody else to start bringing in homes into Gaza, into schools and mosques and, to rebuild the place. But what I can do as a doctor is I can try and bring a hospital into Gaza. I need other people to help bring in other things into Gaza. But, like I say, the important thing isn't the hospital, it's the journey of the hospital. It's what the hospital represents. It's what the hospital means. It's the blueprint that we have now, a coalition of governments working together with regards to healthcare in Gaza, helping coordinate, give us the logistics. So, this is not an easy task. It really isn't, And like I say, I'm not a fundraiser, I'm not a politician, and I'm just a junior doctor.
You've been trying to get investors for the hospital as well. What's the kind of feedback you've got?
Again, it's a similar thing. It's like, well, there's not access, blah, 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 blah. What happens if it gets bombed? I understand everyone's concerns, right? But everyone's already defeated. They've succumbed to it. Well, they're just going to bomb it. Oh, well, they're just going to ethnically cleanse those people anyway. So we're going to have to wait, see if the job's done or not. And I'm like, we can't wait for that. We need to be proactive. So when people, you can't be paralyzed by the situation. They're saying they want to ethnically cleanse them, but they've been trying to ethnically cleanse Palestinians for 75 years. So we need to just not give up. We need to not give up. We need to keep going with whatever it is. Like, there's a hadith, which I think it's a hadith where it's like, is it hadith or Quran? Like, you can quote me on this one. But it says, if you're planting a flower or a seed and you hear the trumpet, still plant that seed.
Yeah.
Because it's about the intention. My intention is to bring a hospital and healthcare back into Gaza. I can't control what the world's strongest military that's ever been in human history does. I can't control that. I can't control what the most powerful army in the region does. I can't control when they bomb a school and bomb a hospital. But what I can control is fighting for this hospital. And if I can get this hospital in, hopefully, inshallah, it changes things.
Inshallah. You were speaking to me about the Freedom Flotilla that you're going to see off.
Yeah.
The first time they had Greta Thunberg and a lot more high-profile people.
Yeah.
And some of them got detained, some of them got deported. The second time is not going to be as strong as a profile of people. And you're going to see them off today?
Yeah. I'm flying out on Friday to go see them off, yeah. I'm a bit nervous for them. They are, again, this is what I mean about, like, sometimes some of the things that we do might sound crazy. Like me trying to bring a hospital into Gaza. These people are sailing a wooden ship into the waters to go into the heart of the beast, to go into what is an active genocide, and to sail to where an army that doesn't respect any international laws. And they're trying to bring in some baby formula. A group of normal people risking their lives on a wooden ship. SubhanAllah, like I think about this and I go, one day, in 100 years' time, there'll be books written about stuff like this.
Yeah.
where they show these like F-16s flying and bombing and killing these people, and then a group of these, like, most of them non-Muslims, getting on a wooden ship and sailing with baby formula.
It's like a story of Dawood alayhi salam and Jalut, literally.
Yeah, it's it's giving me chills, like, thinking about it, what they're trying to do. And this is what I mean about, like, daring to do something, daring to try. Look, if I fail, I fail, right? But at least I tried. And that's what we've got to do. We can't be paralyzed by fear. And those people on the flotilla, they're not paralyzed by fear. They're optimistic, they're hopeful. You know, they have tawakkul. Why do we not have tawakkul?
Why do we not, though? Because we're Muslims, we're meant to have that courage in the sense that, like, you're building a hospital, you've planted a seed and the rest is up to Allah. If it gets bombed, it gets bombed. If it gets protected, it gets protected.
Yeah.
You went there doing the same thing. We're in the comforts of our home.
Yes.
And we're criticizing
Yeah.
Dr. Muhammad is building a hospital, or he's having a Snickers bar while he's saving lives and he's got bombers on top of him.
Yeah.
What does the Muslim community need to do, not just for a hospital, for the whole cause of Palestine?
Yeah.
And what kind of courage do we need? Because they are, like you were saying earlier, people are scared of losing their jobs.
Yeah.
But you packed up your bags, so there is no job.
Yeah.
What do we need to do?
You know, it's that thing. It's like having tawakkul on Allah. Like, look, you either have the dunya or you get the akhirah, right? Some people are lucky to get both. But, you know, we're in a stage of the world and we're in a stage of time where we're watching the Muslim Ummah be decimated, whether it's in Palestine, whether it's in India, whether it's in Yemen, whether it's in Sudan, whether it's in Syria, whether it's in Lebanon. And, you know, how long is this life? How long is it? Like, are you so scared to hold on to these 30, 40 years that you have on this dunya, or however long you've got left? You're so scared to hold on to that, to live in comfort and never poke the bear, while you're watching literally countries being wiped off the map. That's what's happening. And I think, like, people just have to make a conscious decision in their heads of what they want and be honest with yourself. When you say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, do you mean that? Are you willing to fight for it? And when I mean fight for it, I mean, like, you know, use your voice, protest, boycott, go out there and campaign and fight for what's going on. Mobilize, do something, but don't sit there and do nothing. And I think, you know, the first thing is, I think people have to do is just they have to get their own affairs in order. Pray your 5 prayers a day. Start with that. Do you know what I mean? Correct yourself and Allah will correct the rest. I mean, that's just the way that it is. And again, you don't have to be perfect. I'm not a perfect Muslim at all. I would never ever claim to be. But, you know, there are some areas that I'm just better at than others. And one of them is just having a bit of tawakkul, just letting whatever happens, and just leaving it in the will of Allah, in the hands of Allah. That's my strength. But there are other things that I'm not so good at, you know. And again, you don't have to be the perfect Muslim. You don't have to be the perfect activist. But you have to try.
100%. And I think the more we strive, the more Allah will open doors for us. But like you said, the first thing, 5 times Salah.
Yeah.
That's bread and butter.
Yeah.
Before anything. The Palestinians in Gaza, how do they actually pray their 5 times Salah with bombs over them? Like, what do you see there in their faith?
Do you know, they'd be going to the mosque and praying in the mosque. And obviously the mosques get bombed all the time. You know, we had mass casualty events because of mosques being bombed. In the hospitals, you know, people getting up out of beds, missing limbs, with a tourniquet tied on, praying. They wouldn't even pray lying down. That's what Salah meant to them. You know, I was there during Ramadan and we used to get up for Fajr, prayers and pray Fajr prayers together. We used to do Taraweeh together. We used to do Qiyam Layl together. And, you know, it's like, because I was there in the hospital when we were doing all of that. I mean, just no one, like everyone's, it's not even an option, you know, whether you pray or not, you pray. But, you know, that's because they're always constantly reminded of death. Death is everywhere in Gaza. So, you know, you know that your moment can be at any time. I mean, for me, that was a factor. Like, I was worried that I was going to die while I was here, and it would make me concentrate more on Salah. It would make me pray it on time. You know, I wouldn't, when I hear the adhan, I would be like, right, I need to pray, because like I don't want to, you know, be an hour and not prayed and then I get killed. And then my last Salah was the Dhuhr, and it's already Asr, and I died after Asr and I didn't pray Asr. So
that's the reality of their life.
That's the reality of the life. But, you know, to me, that kind of just hits home at, like, you know, you're playing with fire. You know, when you're not praying, you're playing with fire when you're living a sinful life. Like, you just don't know when death is going to come. And I think, you know, growing up as a doctor, like growing up working as a doctor, you know, in the last, like, last over a decade or whatever I've been a doctor, I see death all the time. I see children as young as 6 years old who have got cancer. You know, I've had children 17 years old who died of cancer. I've had kids who have come in at 2 years old who have drowned. I've had a woman, like I've had, you know, I remember once my first ever day working as a doctor in Scotland, we had a woman come in and she had a cough, and she was like, oh yeah, it's been there for like 3 weeks. She was well, no temperature, no nothing, but she was just like, oh, you know, I want to get it checked out before I go on holiday. Me and the husband are going and celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary. She was only like 47 or something. And we did a chest x-ray on her, and the chest x-ray looked a bit, you know, a bit suspicious. So we decided to do a CT scan. She had cancer, and it was like stage 3 cancer. So she, you know, it already spread out of her lungs. So she's not going to survive. It's a matter of time. And I remember just telling her, and she couldn't even contemplate that she was going to die in a matter of weeks, because she's well. She's come in literally about to celebrate her, you know, her anniversary with her husband. And that just shows to me, you could have plans, but Allah could have other plans for you. And I think that's probably been one of the things that has really stuck with me the most, is the fact that death is constantly there. It can happen at any moment, and you have to be ready to meet your maker. And Gaza reminded me of that all the time. You know, you would see kids that would have bread in their hands. You would see people who had a sibha in their hand. They were doing tasbih, subhanallah, when they died. Kids, some of them kids. Grown adults. You know, you just don't know when your moment is going to come. And I think, you know, maybe that's what Gaza has shown the world, is just like, you just don't know. When you see that much of death, that's why so many Muslims who weren't really practicing have come back to Islam. They see the power of faith. They see the power of how fragile life is, and death could come at any moment. So, you know, when people ask, like, what should we do for Palestine? What should we do for Gaza? Man, just start praying. Start your 5 prayers a day. Go back to Islam. Go back to, you know, being a decent human being and a decent Muslim. And just do that first. Because Allah says, you know, if you correct yourself, Allah will correct your affairs.
Just a couple more things before we wrap up. I know you need to leave. When you came back from Gaza the first and second time, you were probably telling these stories to your family. Mm-hmm. What was their reaction to you? And now you're planning to go back a third time. Yeah. If obviously the Israelis will allow you entry. Yeah. What was the kind of reaction you had from your family?
Do you know, like, we've had family members killed for generations in Gaza. Generations. So, stories of death and children being killed, and it's like water off a duck's back for us. You know, that's the accepted faith that we have as Ghazawis. It's almost accepted in our house. Obviously for me, you know, going out there and experiencing this, not many people get to experience that level of, you know, death. I think it's very hard to communicate. You know, my dad's health has deteriorated because of this. My mum is, you know, sad all the time, you know, because of this. You know, they live their life still, but, like, you know, you can see the effects that it has on the whole family. because it's our family that are being killed. It's our family that are starving. So, yeah, it's like I say, when it's been happening for generations, there's a different type of coping.
And one final question before we wrap up. If you were to visualize a free Palestine today, what would it look like? And that's brought a smile to your face.
Do you know, in some of the hardest moments I've ever had, I always think back to that. A free Palestine, what it would look like. A free Palestine is a free Muslim world. It's a free Muslim world. A free Palestine frees us all. I mean, I smile not just because it's a free Palestine, it's because we're all free. The whole idea of occupying Palestine is, there's obviously geopolitical reasons why that piece of land is occupied, right? And there's a whole reason why all the governments in the surrounding areas are either propped up to ensure the occupation of Palestine, but a free Palestine means that they no longer need to be propped up. It's freedom for all of us. And I always think about what that day will be like, when the delegations come to Palestine. I always think, what's the Irish delegation going to be like? Who've always stood with the Palestinians, the South Africans. Mandela's grandson, I met him, and he's Chief Mandela. He's the head of the Mandela family now. And I remember, we were talking, and I just said, "Look, man, I'm a nobody. I'm just a Palestinian. I'm just a one guy." And he said to me, "You can't say that." He goes, "Because those Palestinians used to fight for us in South Africa. They gave us money and arms to fight against the apartheid regime." He goes, "So you guys didn't leave us. You fought for us. That's why we're fighting for you." I said, subhanallah, these Palestinians, even in their own oppression, they were helping all these other people. And that's what I mean. I just feel like once Palestine is free, the people in Palestine, all their suffering, they're going to be there for all these people around the world. They're going to be fighting for everyone. They're the ones going to be taking countries to the ICJ for genocide against other countries. They're the ones that are going to be taking in refugees and helping people. They're the ones that are going to send delegations of doctors to help when there's a natural disaster or anything like that. It fills me up with so much hope that this is what's going to be like when there's a free Palestine. You just imagine things like when the Pakistan delegation comes, because they had on their passport they don't recognize the state of Israel and stuff. Imagine, the Pakistan delegation coming in. Imagine the Brazilian delegation.
They just released a statement.
Yeah, imagine the Cuban delegation coming to Palestine. I always think about these things, and I just think how the Algerians, that's where that's where a lot of the resistance was there. Imagine when all of these people come. Imagine the welcome. Imagine how happy everyone will be, because I feel like it's a collective thing. I feel like all of these countries, they share the trauma of the Palestinians. And I feel like it would be one of those days where, everyone will be so happy around the world. There'll only be a few people that will not be happy, but there are so many people that would be so happy when there's a free Palestine. And it's liberating for the Muslims, it's liberating for the global South. And what it means as Palestinians, now that we have a state, now that we have a home, what good can we do for the world? What can we do? Where else can we go liberate now? We were fighting for the liberation of apartheid South Africa when we weren't even free. What happens when we're free? Who are we going to go liberate next? And, like I say, like Allah said, this is where there's always the rightly guided in His Ummah will always be present in a Sham. And when there's a free Palestine, those rightly guided ones in a Sham, what can they do for the world? What can they do for the Muslim Ummah? It gets me emotional thinking about it, but it's just subhanallah, look what they've done while they were oppressed. Look how they united the Muslim world while they were oppressed. Look how many hearts and minds they won while being killed. Imagine what they could do if they were free. Imagine the doors that they could open if they were free. That's why I think, people don't want them to be free. They're a beacon of hope for the world, the Palestinians. And, inshallah, we get to see it in our lifetime.
Inshallah. Have you visited Masjid al-Aqsa?
No, I have not. Yeah, visit Masjid
Inshallah,
Al-Aqsa.
you get to visit very soon.
Inshallah. I always, it's always tough, man, like, going over there and seeing the checkpoints and the occupation. It's hard to see, but inshallah, man, I always said to myself, when I go there, I want to go there as a free man. I don't want to go there in shackles and chains and queuing up at checkpoints to go pray at our mosque. I want to go there as a free man with my people. Do you know what I mean? And you want to sit there while when it's Masjid Al-Aqsa and it's Ramadan, and you have your Bosnian brothers over here, you have like your Bangladeshi brothers over here, and everyone's bringing all these different dishes and everyone's sitting down next to each other and chatting away on the grounds of Al-Aqsa. I think about how beautiful that'll be, for the Muslim. And we think about it where we go, for most of us, never in our lifetimes have we ever had a free Masjid Al-Aqsa. And here we all are, all these Muslims from all different faiths, like all different backgrounds, all sitting here at Masjid Al-Aqsa together, praying together, eating food together, laughing and joking, going to the cafes, the hospitality of Palestinians, when they welcome all these brothers.
Yeah, they gave me a shot of coffee at Fajr and I couldn't sleep after that.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, it'd be such a beautiful, man. It'd be amazing. And that's the thoughts that we've got to put in the back of our heads, that like, no matter how bleak it looks in Gaza, no matter the images that are coming out of Gaza, right? Yeah. This is what we're fighting for. Fighting for that freedom. We're fighting to free Masjid Al-Aqsa for all of us. That's for all of us, that is. And inshallah, man, it'll happen soon.
Inshallah. When I went, there was only 3 rows which were full. And it's obviously a big masjid.
Yeah.
So I pray that we both and the rest of the Ummah can go to visit Masjid Al-Aqsa when it's free.
Yeah.
From the occupation and free from the checkpoints, inshallah. Dr. Mohammed, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And inshallah, your hospital is a success and very soon. And if there's anything we can do, just let us know.
I thank you so much.
Assalamu
Allah khallik. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.